Hey, Biff, do you know why the ghost went on a diet?
Fucking Halloween season, isn't it?
It is.
Why did the ghost go on a diet, Jacques?
Wanted to keep their ghoulish figure. Hey, why do ghouls hang out with demons?
You're just doing this to torture me, right? I mean, really? Yeah. Why do ghouls hang with demons? Whatever you ask question. Yeah. Why? Why do they do it?
Demons are a ghoul's best friend. And with that, I say happy Halloween to one and all, especially you, my good friend Biff.
Where's Joe? Joe, come back.
I mean, how long did it take partnering up with me before you realized, you know what? Joe really was a smart one, not just when I listened, but when he left. But seriously, it is, as this podcast drops, Halloween is coming up this weekend. And as you know me forever, and then me in management, and then when our dream squashing kids came by.
Yeah, this is your Christmas.
Yeah, dude, I titled this episode Halloween is Christmas. Like before, while I was waiting for you to get on, when I was doing some pre-editing, I called it. And it's funny because it's like, we're Halloween year round, but it's special this year. We had just a fantastic COVID safe outdoor Halloween party that,
nice.
It was from 1 to 4. And
in defense of this whole thing, I think Halloween is the better, holiday, if you will, from the standpoint of there's kind of like, obviously both Halloween and Christmas have kind of deviated from the so-called original purpose of their, what they're celebrating. But still, you know what? At least people aren't freaking going broke over, Halloween. They're just giving out candies and dressing up and having a good old time. It's just so much better.
Look, I don't want to start off correcting you, but some people are going broke. I think I sent you some of our yard decorations.
I think that's a separate problem. That has nothing to do with Halloween.
Management saw a 12-foot skeleton like months ago, and she's like, we have to have this. And we couldn't find it. It sold out everywhere. And then a friend of hers called like about a week ago saying, hey, I'm at Home Depot, like 2 towns over, and like somebody, they just found one out back, or there was one. She goes, I'll wait here for you guys to come pick it up. And management Venmo'd her the money, and I went and got it. And it is, dude, I will post it. Actually, I don't know if I sent you a picture. There was there was what's called a hunter's moon the other day. Okay. And the background, it almost looks like, a friend of mine says, Jacques, that looks like a 1970s horror movie poster. Just the way that the sky was backlit, with the hunter's moon, and the wife just took it with her phone, no filters, no nothing. It is great. It has these LDI lights for eyes that kind of follow you around. It's just great. But we had this COVID safe outdoor, pumpkin carving thing, and, management, she just went crazy all out in just the best way. She, the night before, made all these cupcakes and cookies, but she didn't decorate them. So when the kids came over, you could decorate your own cupcakes and cookies. Right. I'll post, but like the decorations were all gummy eyeballs and these like almost Pez type candy, but shaped like bones and skeletons. And so the party was scheduled 1 to 4 because, that way people can eat lunch and then come over, and you don't have to feed them dinner. Right. Yeah, I think people started leaving around 6:30.
It is what it is.
And it was awesome.
That's great.
It's the first time my wife has worked for a family that she invited to a party like this. We really love her work family.
I'm really happy to hear. Like, I guess I've seen little things here and there, and I'm sure I missed quite a few posts here and there, but it does seem like this is a nice group that she's working with. So that's good to hear, with all the some of the, because I've definitely seen some of the insane
other stuff. So my parents actually came by, and they were just blown away because they would, and We did. We had like 25, 30 people. But again, everybody except the kids who can't be vaccinated have been vaccinated,
Right,
you know,
right, right.
I mean, because it's a small circle, but it was still outside.
Yep.
And it was really great because in my costume, everybody thought I was dressed as the dude Lebowski, and they weren't wrong. But then as soon as I picked up, you know, Thor's hammer, they're like, "Oh, okay, now I get it." Which in Endgame, you know, as Thor, depressed Thor's walking through Avengers, like Robert Downey Jr. calls him, it's like, "On your left, Lebowski." So.
Right.
She dressed as you know, oh no, actually that was today. Today she dressed as the variant female Loki from the Loki TV show.
Right. Yep.
And that was great. But yeah, no, it really was, you know, great party. Joe came by, and
Nice.
Joe and I, for the last few years, have made it an annual tradition of watching the Paul Lynde Halloween special together.
Right.
It's horrible, and every second is awesome. Like we love it.
It's like one of those deals where it's like I'm guessing that to some degree the network gave him guidance, and the Paul Lynde just said, "Yeah, whatever." Right? I mean, that's kind of how it seems like it turned out. It's been a while, and I haven't seen the whole thing, but I've seen little things of it.
I'm surprised you haven't seen the whole thing because it's Kiss's first appearance on network TV, and they do 3 songs.
Whatever. Yeah.
But anyways, that was great. That was fun. It's always lovely. Joe ended up sticking around because I played the Paul Lynde thing, and then it's winding down. It's 9:30 at this point, and I figured, well, I'll play something in the background where we're saying our long goodbyes. And I start playing Ghostbusters.
Right.
I want to say this from the absolute bottom of my heart, and I mean this. Everybody in their life should have the opportunity to watch Ghostbusters with Joe at least once.
Is that right?
Dude, it's like watching Slapshot with, you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, honestly, it's either you are doing yourself a disservice if you don't go out of your way to watch Back to the Future with them, and maybe all 3 and back to back.
Yeah.
But Ghostbusters, watching Ghostbusters, I love Ghostbusters. It's a classic. It's a desert island movie for me. I didn't realize how much I loved it until I watched it. It was the first time I've watched it with Joe start to finish.
That's and like obviously it's once again going back to the people shitting on other people. It's easy to shit on the people who are like obsessed with things or whatever, but there is this thing where there are people who actually kind of pick up on things that us casual viewers just never do, right? And to say that doesn't in many cases enhance the movie, right?
So it is. I honestly, it was just the best Halloween night I've had in quite some time. It was great. Hey, we usually start off the show by giving a shout out to our last guest, or talking a little bit about the last sideshow. So I want to take a second and say a couple things. The comedian who came on last week, Greg Bogus, was a fantastic guest. A lot of fun. This coming, anybody in the greater Boston area, it is this Thursday, 3 days from when this podcast drops, that he's doing his Mondo comedy show back at the Lunar Theater inside Mill Number 5. I will definitely be going there. This week, I'm probably just going to take an old sideshow and repost it, and I might do a wrap around at the beginning because we didn't. But I will say, Greg had such a good time that he has reached out to a number of comedians. So over the next few months, we're going to be talking to a lot of Boston-based, New England-based comedians coming on.
That's cool. Yeah, and I think it's just I think it's fantastic that Greg is doing this in that venue, right? I mean, that's such a cool venue, and I really do hope that everything picks up, and we have that kind of a more vibrant activity at that place, because it really is a kind of a cool joint. And obviously I didn't really get to partake in what that place can offer, but it just everything about that old these historic buildings, and just kind of revitalizing it as a kind of
Yeah.
kind of entertainment hub. I think that's just fantastic.
So speaking of, I have a little bit of news about the place. The overall place is called Mill Number 5. It's in Lowell. The Lunar Theater is inside it. But I've been talking about it on the podcast for a while. It looks like we're going to lock on a date this week, but it looks like maybe Friday, November 19th, I'm going to be producing my first event inside.
Nice.
It's called Joe's Basement. About a month ago, as I mentioned, we had to take a PS4 in to have a USB drive fixed. And there's a retro gaming place about an hour from here that did it. Right. We walked into the retro gaming place, and my little guy says, Papa, this place looks like Joe's basement. And so it's going to be a retro gaming night. There's going to be like 7 or 8. And I mean, late 70s. I think I'm cutting it off at the NES. I don't think anything newer than the NES. Maybe, maybe an NES 2, but definitely, no more than like 95, like 94, 95, but late 70s. And I'll have more detail.
Certainly nothing this century.
No, gosh, no. And so it's really kind of cool because the mill has the Mill Number 5. As you're walking down and there's all these like different fun stores, there's some not empty spaces, but there's like these little alcoves, and they've set it up to like, I mean, the room itself isn't the size of a hockey net. It's 15 feet tall, but the walls are probably 6 feet by 4 feet, and they'll have like an old chair in there, and it looks like an old reading thing from 150 years. So I told the guy, I'm going to probably have one of my kids wear a Mario outfit, sit in that little space and play. And that, because people, when you go to Disney and when you go to Universal and you see stuff like that, you know what I mean?
Right.
And people, and I'm like, I'm telling you, so many people take selfies. I also decided, look, I'm running this thing. It's my show to run. How can I include other aspects of my life in my town? And we're not charging people to do it. There's going to be no cover fee, and it's an added value thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like this coffee shop can fit like 90 people. Why don't we fill it with like 30? And selfishly, it's fun. But my boys go to a junior high, a Wayne Middle School, and one of them does the band. Just started a couple of weeks ago, and the other one is doing the drama club. They're doing Willy Wonka. So I wrote the principal, and I said, hey, I want to turn this into a fundraiser for the band and for the drama club.
Okay, yeah, that'll be cool. Yeah.
Where you get off the elevator, there's a little stage there. So I'm like, the kids in the band can play a song, and then the kids from the drama club can get up and do a song from Willy Wonka, and they can toggle back and forth for a few hours, talking to the local.
You gonna have Oompa Loompas?
I'm going to say no, except for the fact that
did you see the SNL thing with Bo and Yang?
I did. And but where there's some fifth graders who are that size, it might kind of just naturally work out that way. But I did.
Okay.
No, so it's going to be fun. It's like I'm talking to the local supermarket, about, hey, give us a couple of gift baskets so the kids can raffle it off.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was at this thrift store, picking up some Halloween, like to make the costumes and stuff. Saw some retro gaming shirts. Plus my oldest kid has kind of outgrown some retro gaming shirts. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to raffle these off. Like, so, you know what I mean? It's like little good. So I don't know how well it will go over, but we'll have 2 more podcasts before that. But Greg Bogus's Mondo comedy starts.
What day is this going to be?
Greg's thing is this coming Thursday, the 28th, and my thing is probably going to be Friday, November 19th at Mill Number 5. But I'll have more information because we got another recording before that. So yeah, no, I'm totally excited. Thank you again, Greg. And if you guys like local comic talent coming onto the podcast and telling their stories, then you're going to like the next few sideshows. Yeah. And if you don't like comedy, well, then we're probably not friends.
You know what? I mean, I think that people don't understand how many people in comedy are from that Boston, or the New England area, right? I mean, there's just so many, right?
Well, it's funny because Greg sent me a lot of people, and I've contacted. I've got one guy I texted, I didn't hear from him, and I'm like, hey, you're not going to hit a home run every time.
Right.
And then I got a text from him, like a voicemail text saying, oh, dude, this sounds great. I'm working on a cruise ship now. Internet is spotty. I'm gonna be back. Yeah,
he's
I'm gonna
on a cruise ship.
Yeah, he's a working comedian who's out on a cruise ship, and he's like, he goes, internet is spotty. Sorry for the late reply.
Yeah.
Like, I get home, like, next Monday. Can I call you then? I'm like, dude, perfect.
Cool. Yeah.
So yeah, and so it is. So thank you, Greg, for coming on and hooking it up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
and remember, and yes, and obviously, I should probably push his Twitter, and obviously him and Sally's Twitter handles. We should probably push a little bit more, but both of them are great follows.
You know what? You were right. Thank you for reminding me that, and I will get on that.
Yeah.
So Mel Brooks, 95.
Yeah,
is still working, dude. Still putting in the hours.
And I saw that on the socials, and I thought, wow, so there's a new and I guess this is going to be like more of a episodic rather than like a movie, but right, he's going to finish the history of World Part 2, I guess, right?
Which we were promised Hitler on Ice.
If
you remember the because they had a promo for History of the World Part 2 at the end of History of the World. Yeah. So on one hand, I am not going to be the spoiled brat, from Willy Wonka. I want a pink frosted donut now, Dad. Look, we're all excited that Mel Brooks is on this side of the dirt.
Yeah.
2, that he's working. And 3, that whatever he's going to crank out is going to be awesome. But come on, we all want Spaceballs. We all want Spaceballs.
Yeah, but you know what? Sure, but I mean, I think the other cool thing is, and obviously we lost, Carl Reiner in the last 9 months or so. But yeah. I mean, there is that kind of that triumvirate of old dudes that are just like between him. So basically, we're talking about Mel Brooks, Carl Reiner, and Dick Van Dyke, right? Those
don't forget Norman Lear. Norman Lear is still working.
Sure, Norman Lear, but I mean, like those 3 are like they have this funny. They have these connections, right? Like right. And so I think in that sense, it's just amazing that they're still and obviously the Mel Brooks, his son did that
hysterical
PSA.
But smart, yeah.
Yeah, just don't kill my dad, and Carl Reiner, PSA during the COVID pandemic, right? So
it's funny how smart that what is his name? I think he's done a bunch of zombie stuff. No, it's great. Hey, you're not a Kiss fan, but you're a Van Halen fan. Have you been following the bullshit
from the start? From the start, yeah. So. Yeah, so you put it on. You put this on. So why don't you tell me about what your perspective is?
So management was reading this online the other day, and it turns out that there's a bunch of Van Halen fans out there who are not requesting, nay, demanding Eddie or Wolfgang Van Halen stop being a prick and do a reunion tour so that they can see Van Halen one more time and honor his dad. And now here's the thing. Here's my take on it.
Yeah.
The epitome of no-win situation. Wolfgang puts together a tour and goes on tour with Van Halen, and people get to see it. Yay, that's great. All this stuff. But those fans get what they want. On the other hand, if he puts together a tour and honors his dad and lets these people say goodbye to Van Halen one more time, dude, write your own songs. You're living on your dad's coattails. Why you're a nothing musician without your. It's like it's a no-win situation for the kid.
Yeah. So, bottom line is that he's his own person, and obviously there's been some, a lot of the hardcore Van Halen fans have criticized him for taking over Michael Anthony's spot in Van Halen back when they were still touring. That that essentially Wolfgang was keeping Van Halen from reuniting, and so all this garbage, right? But ultimately, I'm with you in terms of Wolfgang has handled this, great, really well. There's a lot of people who insist that he play his dad's music, where Wolfgang understands that, he can play a lot of his dad's stuff, but he knows that he's not Eddie Van Halen, right? So I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff that he done where he goes, "Oh, here's my Panama cover to honor my dad." Well, he did the bass cover, so
That's awesome.
So like I've been following him this whole time. What really makes his kind of handling of the trolls great is that not just him, but I don't know if you know that his mom gets involved, and obviously his mom is Valerie Bertinelli, right?
Which ties us back into Norman Lear, who created One Day at a Time.
Sure. But I mean, when he has mom, like there are these great exchanges between him and his mom where they're just like, oh my God, both of these people just get it, right? For one thing. And they're just creating, so, and it's funny when like Wolfgang posts these things and like all these people come to the, support of Wolfgang. It's like, yeah, dude, he doesn't need the support. He gets it. He's just fucking with these people, right? I mean, it is what it is. And, he's making the best of it, and I'll tell you, his music is actually, I like his music. It's its own thing, right? Nothing to do with Van Halen, just as its own thing. I think his music is fine, and he just played the Whiskey recently. And if it wasn't for the pandemic, I probably would have had the ticket. But so yeah, and he had a stretch where he his band opened for Guns N' Roses. So yeah, he's doing fine, and I'm glad to see that he's kind of messing with all of this stuff in a very productive way.
Yeah, so. No, good on him.
Absolutely.
All right, now let's turn to some not the great stuff. So late last week, on a film set with Alec Baldwin, an accidental death. Why don't you talk about that for a sec?
Well, yeah, I guess, and I think there's things coming out, as we speak, right? But it sounds like there is a lot of things involved so essentially the quick 20-second synopsis is that Alec Baldwin was essentially rehearsing a set that involved a firearm. The firearm discharged. The firearm contained live rounds, and it killed an up and coming cinematographer and injured one of the assistant directors, I believe. And so now there's a huge, obviously, this has kind of exploded. I think there's a lot of things happening. One of which is that this specific production had some safety issues that had resulted in a lot of pushback from the production crew, basically demanding, better conditions because of the existing safety issues. And on top of that, one of the unions, their crew pulled out just before this accident happened. So they had essentially non-union crew essentially working on the set, and not to say that they're responsible for that. That's just to say that there was issues with safety, right? It's not the so-called non-union crews caused this thing, because ultimately it sounds like the issue had to do with the arm. There's, I guess, a role called armorer. And you probably know this more than I do because I'm not a entertainment guy, but from what I read, there's a person called the armorer who is responsible for these live rounds, and she whatever happened, there was a live round in this gun. But even then, it's really wacky in that this happened during a kind of a break in the filming. So while the group that got injured and killed was over in one area, just kind of looking over the scene and the light and how that scene was going to appear, Alec Baldwin was on the other side, just kind of going over the upcoming scene. And he actually went over the scene the first time where he just pulled the gun out of the holster, and that was fine. And then the second time around, they kind of went over it again, and the second time around it discharged. Now obviously we don't have all of the information in, but I don't think that there was an intention for Alec Baldwin to essentially shoot that gun, right? It was just he just going over the scene. So if everything seen, if it went the way it was supposed to, Alec Baldwin just pulled the gun out of the holster, and there was an accidental discharge on that prop gun. And one of the things that was complained about was that prop gun had accidental discharges before. So obviously it's that accidental discharge with a live round that should probably have never been in there in the first place, and everything else that killed this person. So it looks, bottom line, it looks really bad.
Well, I guess Alec Baldwin drove right to the police station.
Well, I mean,
he's like, I'll help however it did. But in 2021 with CGI and special effects, why do you have anything except like a toy wooden gun that
I mean, yeah. So that's its own question, right? And I obviously I can't argue that point with you, right? But so there's that aspect, and then but there's the whole aspect of what was going on where. So I guess this is a Netflix. I think it's a Netflix production. So what was happening where there literally were all these red flags that were raised prior to this incident. Literally, if people walking out isn't a red flag, right? I mean, right? So
right. No, that it's, and I think the onion gets pulled back before we get answered. But the tragic loss of, you shouldn't be dying at work.
Well, I mean, in general, I mean, there are some. I mean, certainly, you don't expect to die on a movie set, right?
Right. No, it's horrible. And speaking of death, were you a fan of either Bosom Buddies, which is probably, I mean, when that came out, that's when I really started like my world was sitcoms, and that sitcom will always be more than special to me. And then, of course, living for Bob Newhart.
Sure. Right.
Of course, I'm talking about the actor Peter Scolari, who passed away this week, and it's like, and it's crazy because here's Bob Newhart, mid-90s, another one of those guys still working out there, still hysterical, outliving his former co-star who's passed away 30 years his junior. But I mean, he had a career outside those two sitcoms,
sure,
but those are absolute classic, long-running, decades later, still beloved TV series.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously, Bosom Buddies is kind of a, I don't know how to place that one, right? Because of all the, on the one hand, right, it is where many of us first saw Tom Hanks, I think, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That was it. Yeah.
Right. And then on the other hand, there is a component that is, there's a little bit of they stole a little bit from Three's Company in terms of, these guys kind of, pretending that they're these personas that they're not really are, whatever the case may be. But I think that while the Bosom Buddies was great, I really thought that him, and especially, Scolari's, the way he and Julie Duffy, as a kind of a ensemble cast, I think the way they were on Newhart, I think was really the better. That just seems like the better performance. I mean, Bosom Buddy was kind of had obviously was kind of this breakthrough thing to some degree, but I just thought that what he did with Newhart was essentially the superior performance, right?
And in this day and age, like 66 is just so crazy young. You know?
Well,
and he was a working actor still. He was on that show. Oh, is it Girls like last year? But
right.
No. But yeah, it's just sad when like somebody you grew up like really, really liking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So we already talked a little bit about social media, but anything else going on in social media these days?
Yeah,
Bill?
you know what? So I think one of the things that's really frustrating, and I'm sure you've seen this, you've felt this firsthand, where social media and all of the fake news and everything that just gets perpetuated. It'd be great if we could get a social media platform where people could just talk about the truth, right? Talk about really, really, really what's happening? And unfortunately, one of those such platforms got off to a rocky start. And I guess the great Donald Trump started his own social platform, and like right away it kind of hit a little bit of a snag, I guess.
Yeah. So people like you and me who, don't like people who aren't white, despise immigrants, and just really want to, go back to the good old days.
Absolutely.
We need a place to get together where, big tech isn't going to come in and tell us that we have no right talking about.
I think I really should start talking about being anti-immigrant, because I could be the Asian, what's your face?
I don't even want to say the name, but yeah, exactly. And anybody that and then when you see it got hacked within like hours of being up, you're like, oh, just chef's kiss.
And I know it's shocking to hear this, but my understanding is that they may have, quote, air quote, borrowed some programming code from an existing system. So I'm just thinking, I can't believe that such an allegation could come out. But whatever, I'm sure this will all get litigated in the courts, and I'm sure the rightful people will all be judged as being in the right side of the law.
Look, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but just politically quickly, I don't get excited. Like, I don't listen to news at all. If something big happens, I'm going to hear about it. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't follow, the Red Sox, but I know they got eliminated from the playoffs. You can't not know these things, right?
Yeah.
That said, I don't listen to the news, but is there a sliver of hope that this time the walls are closing in on people like, Matt Gaetz, who I guess that investigation just brought on 2 heavy-hitting prosecutors, which means they're getting ready to move forward. And Steve Bannon, like the House voted almost on party lines again. One of the few Republicans who voted to hold Steve Bannon in contempt actually said, and kudos for her honesty. It's like, yeah, we're going to be in power soon, and I want our subpoenas to be held up too. So, I mean, she's getting grilled by her own party for voting to hold Steve Bannon in contempt and prosecute him for not honoring the subpoena. And like I said, she's not doing it because she really wants him to come and speak and get to the bottom of this January 6th thing. But she's like, hopefully we're going to be in power in a year from now, and I want our subpoenas to have some teeth to it.
Use a subpoena.
Are the walls closing in?
No, I don't think anything is closing in.
I don't either.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, right, I think that you have to look. I'm at a point where I'm looking at everything on a piecemeal basis, where like certain things will go through its process, and sometimes the process will end up in an area where the so-called the correct outcome is what happens. But ultimately, right, I'll
believe it when it happens.
I mean, I don't know how much has changed in general, right? I mean,
let me ask you, because you might follow the news a little more. Is Joe Manchin still a prick?
Well, I mean, like, he's always been a prick, right? I mean, so
but is he still a prick? Yeah. Okay.
I mean, there's nothing that has happened that changed any of that, right?
So you live in West Virginia, and I'm very sorry, and your state ranks 50th in infrastructure. 50th, I forget. How many states do we have right now?
Listen. Bottom line is that at some point, so people are the kind of the crazy thing is that people are voting against their self-interest, because they've been convinced that all these other shiny objects that really don't affect them directly are the things that they should care about, right?
Right.
And so I'm not trying to essentially say that people should vote in a certain way, but ultimately, if you're a person with, like, say, these hourly jobs with no benefits, it seems like it's in your best interest to side with the
people trying to raise your minimum wage.
The commie pinko party that's trying to raise your minimum wage and that's trying to give you benefits that currently don't exist.
Look, I don't want my kid getting on the school bus going to a public school so they can teach him about socialism.
But I mean, so part of it is that people are kind of like not
but
smart enough.
But Joe Manchin himself, dude, he represents the state that's 50th out of 50 in infrastructure, and he is holding up the infra. And we're done with this, but it's just.
Ultimately, isn't it a shock that and also obviously Kristen Sinema is another one, right? It is kind of a shock that both of these are. How did Democrats win those seats in those states? That's kind of what I ask, right? So,
or did they, Biff? Or did they? Let's get on Trump's platform and we'll just discuss about it.
Whatever the case may be, they it's one of those things where, and I'm not trying to essentially poo-poo this whole thing, but ultimately, like, it's not surprising that these two states have representatives that don't necessarily, align with some of the progressive aspects of the Democratic Party, right?
Enough of that crap. What is happening COVID-wise? I'm hoping, so it's Halloween this week. I'm really hoping my 11-year-old gets his first shot before Thanksgiving and second one before Christmas. Is that going to happen?
Well, I think so. It is, U.S. is kind of wacky in that we have this whole subculture of anti-vaccination, anti-whatever, right? The people who are resisting vaccination, and at the same time, this amazingly abundant supply of vaccination. So, on the one hand, we have like entire first responders being either fired or dismissed or whatever because they're refusing to essentially take the vaccination to align with their local government's policy on vaccination. And at the same time, I just got a text. So in April, I got my J&J vaccine, and I just got a text today from the county of Los Angeles saying, hey, here's how you can get my booster.
Did you die? What? Did you die when you got your
well, you know what, that's a real deep philosophical question, because really am I really speaking into a vacuum where do I actually know for sure that I still exist and I'm not in some kind of a fucking dreamscape where I'm just like, this is like some it's like that whole Lost episode, the Lost series, right? I could just be in a dream where I'm just, yeah. But as far as I can, ascertain, I don't think I've died, and we'll see.
But yeah, so you're going to get your booster. And like I said, I think my 11-year-old is going to be able to get his before Thanksgiving. I think the rollout is supposed to have. I'm really hoping, but
I hope so too.
But yeah, with the first responders like nationwide, and it's not just in like California and Massachusetts. It's so many states that are red states that their governors have been like, yeah, we of course now Texas and Florida, but this is an epidemic of at this point, it's an epidemic of the unvaccinated, and the whole pushback from the law enforcement, first responders community, and maybe we're over exaggerating like how what percentage it is, but yeah,
I would say the percentage doesn't matter. When I say that the percentage doesn't matter, like COVID has been the number one killer of the police force over the last year, right? And so yes. I'm thinking. So yeah, so you don't want to try to help prevent the one thing that has killed you more than everything else. Okay, whatever.
So no, it's horrible. What else is horrible is the crime wave ripping apart the homeland. What crime story? Because this week your crime story I watched, but there was no details. It would just kept showing the guy with the jacket over his head.
I'll be honest with you. I was really disappointed that the network did not create the reenactment that I expect out of my Japanese news networks. But what basically happened was that I brought these people up before, but this was one of these major incidents involving the Japanese organized crime, right? The so-called Yakuza, right? And there was a major incident back in April that finally just came into light, where there was a major incident that occurred in one of the kind of the transportation hubs in Tokyo where this thing happened involving the Japanese Yakuza. And it turns out that a group of Yakuza members from this one, Yakuza clan, I don't want you to judge or anything, but apparently they kind of went out and they kind of got drunk.
What?
And then that led to some arguments. And there was actually a brawl that occurred between members of the same Yakuza clan.
It sounds like a family reunion.
Sounds like Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Right. But essentially the gist of it was that it is great. The Japanese do the same thing that everybody else does, where they sensationalize the title so that to gain clicks, right? So essentially it sounded like it's going to be some kind of this fantastic Yakuza related incident. It just turns out a bunch of drunken guys who just happened to be members of the same Yakuza group, they kind of got into an argument, got into a fight, and got arrested.
Is it racist for me to ask if the fight was everybody kung fu fighting?
God fucking damn it!
I'm just asking.
Does kung fu sound Japanese to you? Does kung fu sound Japanese to you?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But it was. But I was very disappointed because usually you send these links and it's right? Like it's the animated thing, and then it's the CGI thing, and then it's the reenactment thing with actors.
The most pathetic crime incidents that requires a reenactment. Like somebody fucking does a dine and dash, and it requires a reenactment. That's what's great about Japanese fucking crime story.
The guy, the three different kinds of animation for the guy using the outlet at the 7-Eleven to warm up his
shit like that.
Oh, it was great. So we both live for hockey, and the NHL is back.
One of us do.
Yeah, you. But my boy Brad Marchand is off to not a Kopitar start. Is Kopitar still on pace to score 246 goals?
I mean, he's fantastic. I mean, come on.
But Marchand's been like star of the game for literally not like my opinion. He's been first star of the game.
I think it's one of those situations where I think Marchand has become the best player on that line. But maybe Pasternak will kind of come back into the fold. I mean, I hate to say this because obviously I'm a huge Patrice Bergeron fan, but he's kind of on that tail end of his career.
But he's still right. He'll still be great for like
he's
4
still
more
great,
years.
but he's not the 2011 Patrice Bergeron.
Isn't it great that NHL is now back on national television in the US?
So I think there's a few things. Number one is that obviously that exposure is great for the NHL, but I think one of the things that it has done is that when you watch what ESPN has been doing, which is pretty good, and then when you watch what TNT is been doing, which is actually even better, ultimately they recognize that this is entertainment, right? And so they're doing such a better job of presenting the sport in the context of entertainment than NBC ever did. NBC was just garbage. And to give you an idea how much of a garbage thing that was, it's like they actually, a lot of these guys just grab the talent from the NBC Sports Network and put them in their new environments, and they're freaking now actually good, right? So like Liam Neeson? Is that his name? Liam McHugh. I'm sorry. Liam McHugh was the main NHL on NBC host, is now on TNT, and that dude is freaking great now under TNT, and TNT has managed to get Wayne Gretzky to trash talk on air. It's like, holy crap! It's like this is like.
Well, that TNT has done it right with the NBA for what, 20 years now?
Absolutely.
And their hosts have that kind of vibe that the Monday Night Football was built on the backup. Like Monday Night Football, people tuned in as much to see their favorite team or whoever they're betting on that week as they were tuning in to hear the guys in the booth and that. And the TNT guys have that kind of status where they are rock stars. And, it's like, yeah, people will watch not just because their favorite team's playing, because they want to see those guys go at it at halftime.
Well, and I think the difference is that the NBA, and so when we talk about TNT, we're talking about, Charles Barkley, and we're talking about people like Shaq.
Yep.
These are like some of the greatest. I mean, these are like first ballot Hall of Fame level great players who are providing amazing entertainment.
Right. But you take away their basketball skills, they're also first ballot Hall of Famer trash talkers.
Yeah,
which is great, which is what makes, so they know what they're talking about.
Right.
And they're just great trash talkers.
Right. And the thing is that every indication was that back in the day, Wayne Gretzky was a freaking, A1 trash talker in his day. Now, they didn't have miking up back then, and a lot of this thing wasn't really documented, but it's kind of known in the hockey circles that Wayne Gretzky is a premier trash talker. And I think a lot of those NHL guys are great, but I think that NBC hoped that somebody like Jeremy Roenick was going to be that guy, and it just ended up not happening. But I'm hoping that this loosening of the reins by both ESPN and TNT will essentially lead to better coverage in general. I think it's been better already overall. So, there's that.
What does the NHL have to do to get people to go to Buffalo Sabre games? Did you see highlights from the other night's Bruins game? Dude, Buffalo's always had trouble with attendance. It's a small market.
Right.
Buffalo, there's not a lot of money in the region. And that's why they relied on people from Hamilton, Ontario, which is why they wouldn't put a team when the Coyotes, a Canadian billionaire, was the guy billionaire who tried to buy the Coyotes and move them there like 5 or 6 years ago. And the Sabres blocked it because, look, people in Hamilton don't necessarily love the Sabres, but they can't get in to see the Leafs lose.
Sure, yeah.
So they drive an hour. You can drive an hour north from Hamilton to see the Leafs lose, or you can drive an hour south to see Buffalo play. And with the border closed, honestly, you guys have almost as many people watching you play F&H as the Sabres have, and they won their first 3 home games.
Yeah, I think that Buffalo is what it is, and like every league has its Buffaloes, and I don't know that necessarily that the league has to do anything with Buffalo, right? I mean, specifically, the only thing that they could consider doing with Buffalo is that if Buffalo does continue to become the garbage franchise that it is, then they could consider moving that team to Quebec, and it solves a different problem. So I think it's fine.
It's just, I mean, they got a decent team this year. Like I said, won their first few games, but
no, they don't have a decent team this year.
They don't. They got lucky and won the first few games out of the gate.
Listen, this is what the Buffalo is notorious for, these fast starts. But if you look at their lineup, it's garbage. It is garbage.
So let's get back onto the social media bandwagon. This time in the NHL.
Oh my God. Have you seen any of this Carolina Hurricane stuff?
I not only have I seen this, where this podcast is audio only, I'm just going to describe the way Biff lit up like a Christmas tree when I met you. You've been giddy waiting to talk about this.
Holy fuck. So Carolina, I mean, how many people even know that Carolina has a hockey team, right? But Carolina Hurricanes social media is freaking, they are the fucking kings. They are the freaking gold standards of social media. And obviously I don't follow all the other sports as close as I probably should. But so what happened was that, in kind of a quick backstory, in the off season, the Carolina Hurricanes did what's called an offer sheet, which is essentially an attempt to poach another team's player by putting them on an offer sheet to say, hey, we're gonna sign you to this contract, and if you want to keep that guy, you have to match that contract. Well, the player that they signed happened to be on the Montreal Canadiens. Now, the fact that they did this already on its own has several layers to it, because in the previous year, there was a Carolina Hurricanes player named Sebastian Aho, a highly touted,
great
freaking
talent,
amazing player that the Carolina Hurricanes were just kind of it's their mess up, and Montreal decided, you know what, we're gonna put him on an offer sheet, and Carolina goes, oh, okay, well, we'll match it. We're gonna keep this guy. So literally as retaliation, and if you tell me, you could argue all you want that this was not retaliation, this was business. Yeah, screw you. This was retaliation, because one of the things that they did was they built when they signed him to sign this Montreal player, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, to an offer sheet. His bonus basically was like $20, but it was like, it reflected like the jersey numbers of the players that they were trying to purchase, stuff like that. So already there was bad blood that essentially Carolina stole this player from Montreal, but then Montreal fans, being who they are, saying, yeah, screw you, have fun with this worthless guy, blah, 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 right? So they had their first matchup after this essentially this garbage that happened. And not only did Carolina win this game, the guy that they poached from Montreal, scored a goal,
the winning,
right?
Yeah. The tip in was that the deflection. He
right,
had
but I mean,
nice
you want to talk about poetic justice, right? I mean, it's like, right, but all along, the social media had been planning for this day for weeks, and where they, bought a website called, bought a domain name called didhabslose.com. So they created this website called didhabslose.com. And as soon as it became pretty clear that they're going to win that game, the social media, basically pushed this new website. Hey, didhabslose.com. And then it turns out that if you go to that website, they had a special discount for the two players that was kind of like part of this brouhaha, the Sebastian Aho and Jesperi Kotkaniemi. They had their personal jerseys and t-shirts on sale at these reduced prices. So on a random Thursday night, people were saying, what the hell is this? They go to the website. Hey, I could get discounted t-shirts, jersey t-shirts of these guys, right, on a Thursday night. And they made a killing. I mean, Carolina's a small market, and they suddenly made a killing on it. Well, obviously the Montreal fans were going to, sit there and do nothing about it. So somebody hacked that site, and then the Carolina guys goes, fucking, this is great. Like, this is an overreaction. And basically they said, yeah, we're just going to let this go, because the more people see how much of a big deal it was for the Canadiens, and the better it is for them. So it's like,
dude, that's so great.
Just amazing.
That is. I mean, seriously, take a skate around.
Absolutely. Listen, I used to think that the LA Kings has a really, really good social media group, and they do a great job. But freaking Carolina, I bow down to the Carolina social media.
That's. Are you bowing down to the people over at Shout Factory?
Oh my gosh, Shout Factory. So I texted this to you and Joe, and I posted on the various social media. I found this by mistake. It's one of these random things. Shout Factory TV is one of those random internet-based networks, but they do have like the streaming TV presence. So I happen to have Samsung TVs, and so they have this Samsung specific TVs where I could just tune into random whatever stream based networks. And they had it just so happened that I tuned in on Tuesday, which had happened to be an Ultraman Taro day for Shout TV, and I said, holy crap, why is my childhood TV program on this on my stupid Samsung TV? And so I went to their website, and it turns out that they actually have a dedicated site on this. There's a genre called Tokusatsu, which is essentially started with a Godzilla franchise, where it has to do with not having real special effects, where everything is actually live shot, where it literally means special filming, I guess is the way roughly translated. But the idea is that it is special effects based on, it's not really special effects, right? There's zero special effects where like people are dressed up in Godzilla costumes, or if there are things flying, they're on piano strings and stuff like that. There is really zero special effects.
That's awesome. That's
right?
awesome.
But they have a whole sub channel dedicated to the Tokusatsu genre, which includes all of the precursors to the Power Rangers genre, among other things, and the Ultramans and those kind of stuff. So it's great.
Did you finish last time we chatted? You were just going to start watching Squid Game. Did you watch?
I watched 2 episodes. Here's the thing with Squid Games. I think that the series is amazing. It is fantastic. The issue that I have is that it's so heavy that I'm thinking, I don't know if I want to subject myself to the Squid Game at this point in my life.
Well, I watched the first 2 episodes and it was too heavy for me. It was.
Yeah.
And management and my 11-year-old wanted to keep watching it.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, you guys can tell me about it. And I'm not going to tell you anything except one night, a couple nights after I stopped watching it, she comes to bed and he's with her and she's carrying him because he is just done. He was just a ball of tears and it was harsh. And she told me about it. I'm like, okay, you guys have to stop telling. I watched the last episode with them, and I'm glad I did. But I would not have been able to make it through. I think it's episode. Were there 8 episodes? I think
so. Yeah,
might have been episode 6 or 7.
I'm gonna go back to it. But I think right now I want to get to a place where like I am just not so stressed to get there. I just think that with all the crap that's going on and everything else, you know what? It's really unfortunate that this is coming out now rather than say in 2019 when I would have been all over it, right? So
yeah, but COVID China changes the.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Have you? Because per our friend Joe, mentioned Joe a lot this week.
Yeah.
I've started watching and I'll probably finish tonight. Murderers in the Building.
I mean, that's the one I probably should watch because amazing cast, right? I mean, how could you go wrong with 2/3 of the Three Amigos and the correct 2/3 of the Three Amigos?
I mean, those two, and pre-COVID, or actually, just before COVID hit, Martin Short and Steve Martin were doing a tour together. They were doing, it was a variety show tour called A Night You'll Forget the Rest of Your Life was the name of their tour.
Right.
And Ellen my wife called, Joe and said, hey, for Christmas, would you, it's not her kind of humor. She would go with me the way I would go to Duran with her, which by the way, Duran album dropped this week. It's pretty okay. But she knows, you know what? Like when I watched Ghostbusters, she was kind of in the room and doing some other stuff, but me watching Ghostbusters with Joe was special. That's something that Joe and I would like when management and I went to see Jim Garofalo together or something else, but she wouldn't have enjoyed seeing, Norm Macdonald with me the way Joe did. And so she called Joe and said, hey, when Steve Martin and Martin Short come by, they were playing in Springfield and she was going to get us tickets, but of course it was canceled because of COVID. So they do this and it is great. It's uncomfortable and but it's Martin Short at his most Martin Shorty. What I mean? Steve Martin's a good actor and he's not Steve Martin being Steve Martin, but Martin Short is Martin Short and he is a delight. I also watched, in the theme of Halloween. I don't really like horror movies, and I don't know if I want to call it.
You only like horror movies.
Horror movies are the best.
Horror movies are the best.
So right? I don't know if this was a French film, but there's a movie called Blood in the Sky. Blood Red Skies. Blood Red Skies.
Do not know.
A vampire on a flight. I'm sick of these motherfucking vampires on this motherfucking plane.
Watch Demon Slayer. It's a Japanese anime. It's vampires. It's great.
But okay, I'll go back. But Blood Red Skies is about a vampire on a on an overseas flight. You know, from Europe to the United States, a nighttime flight, of course. It's a different take on the vampire genre, dude. It's great. It's great. It's really, really great. But it's subtitled, or subtitled or dubbed, but it's but it's pretty good. You as we wrap up, you got a parenting tip?
I just once again, my son is gainfully employed and he's happy with it, and I think just in general, he's adjusting to the life of being. So he's basically working full time, but still going to school. And I think as a parent, I think it's important to adjust to that. So one of the things that I've been doing is I've been doing a little bit more around the house, because there was some stuff that he used to do, because essentially he was kind of doing kind of light school work. So, he had more bandwidth. And so bottom line is that your child is not a slave, especially when they're adults. And I think to some degree, kind of essentially that whole thing of read the room, right?
Yep.
Right. So it's really has to do with that. So I would say read the room, and not go in with the idea that your child is this, this live-in slave of yours. Well, and just kind of, adjust accordingly.
I'm a few years away from that, but it's got to be an adjustment for you, because on one hand, he goes from being utterly dependent for everything from you. Right. And it's not unacceptable to say, yeah, I'm going to give you $20 to go see that movie with your pals, but can you take out the goddamn garbage?
Right. Well, that's the thing. And the thing is that, in all fairness to him, he's been great about doing all that stuff. But the fact that, essentially he has to be at work by 7 a.m., right?
Yikes.
And so that on its own, I understand the grind of having to wake up at a certain time and all that stuff. I get it. And so I think to some degree, it just has to do with, like I said, it's that very simple read the room thing.
Good for you. So here's my parenting tip. And I got this parenting tip from our very good friend Taylor many, many years ago, many years before I had children. People like you, people like Al Eisberg, and Taylor modeled good parenting for me to then learn some life lessons. Sometimes you got to learn mistakes on your own. Every parent's going to fuck up. It's just the way it is. But when cell phones started coming out, Taylor had kids who were tweens. And when they started, when the internet really started and they have email addresses and cell phones, Taylor, the lawyer, came out in him and he said, I remember this like it's yesterday. Yep, I'm giving you a phone, but there is, quote unquote, no assumption of privacy. I reserve the right. And I've heard him talk to his children like this. I've heard him talk to me like this, completely lawyering up and just dropping every legal term about assumption of privacy, all this. And he used to tell him, it's like, look, there's going to be no passwords. There's going to be no this. I'm going to routinely go on and check in the middle of the day to see if you're sending text messages while you should be in class. I'm going to see what your browser history is. And so our 11-year-old, our 14-year-old has his own phone, and he understands that. Like routinely, I'm just like, hey, let me see your phone for a second. Why? I just want to see what you're up to. And if there's any hesitation in handing it over, all right, that's a red flag. The other one doesn't have his phone, but he has a computer. But he has it's not a social media app. It's called Discord. It's through the school. And it's how, his Discord, he has to go through my phone to change his password or to get access to it.
Right.
And there's been a couple of times when I've been like, hey, buddy, quick question. You want to explain this? And I tell him, it's like, he's like, Papa, you told me I can't check your messages. It's like, right. I'm an adult. I pay for the phone. So those are Exhibit A and Exhibit B. You want this privilege. You have, it is a privilege, not a right, that you have this. And if you abuse this privilege, and I remind him all the time, and I just steal Taylor's words, I'm like, there is no assumption of privacy.
Bottom line, if he wants to get a job and get his own whatever,
right. But even then, look, you're a minor. You're in my house and under my jurisdiction, and as you know, as you see me in action, or as some people would say, in action, I'm very lax with my, like, hey, I just told you my 11-year-old is watching Squid Game with my wife. We are very lax on certain things, but you know what? In this digital age of once you put it out there, you can't take it down, and kids doing stupid things with the new technology, as I would have. Thank God. Yeah. Thank God 16-year-old Jacques didn't have access to the internet or social media. Thank God. I mean, but
it's one of those things where not only did we not have to deal with it, our parents didn't have to deal with it.
No, right? No. It's a new can of worms. But that's my parenting tip. It's like, there's, you know, they're not smart enough to handle this. Look, most NBA players and NFL players aren't smart enough to handle their own social media.
So it's sadly true. Yeah.
So that's me. Hey, before I turn it over to you, we're going out on this song that I love. It's for my friend John's band down in Austin called Five Head. I've played them many times. I talked about him. John was the bass player, on my list where we were breaking down like our favorite artist, best bass player. Not only the best player I've ever been in a band with, an honor to have been in a band with, but the best player I've ever seen live. But this song was on a compilation for a small label out of Austin many years ago called Indie iRock. And it's just a great song. But now, Biff, I'm pushing the mic away and leaving it all up to you.
Well, obviously Halloween's coming up, and this is going to be that new Halloween where obviously last year's Halloween was crazy, right? With all the pandemic stuff, and like I think regionally things are opening up, and I don't know what the rules are in your jurisdiction is. I don't know what the rules are in my jurisdiction either. Who knows what Halloween is going to look like? But obviously what we really have to concentrate is on the safety of everybody involved, the people who are giving the treats, people who are trick-or-treating, and definitely the kids who are, by and large, not vaccinated. So I think it's just important that you don't forget.